I want to start off by saying the X100V is hands down my favorite camera that I've ever owned, and I've owned a decent amount of cameras. I've been using this camera for almost 2 years now, and I've never been this inspired to take so many photos. But most of you can probably guess why. It's compact, it's unassuming, and it just kind of blends into your everyday life. For me, I just throw it in a bag or on my shoulder, and it really just becomes an extension of myself. A great example of this is I got married earlier this year in Hawaii, and I had it on me all day during my own wedding day. And that's just the kind of camera the Fuji X100V is. So what makes this camera truly great? Well, number one, for me, it really changed the way I looked at photography. And I think a lot of you can relate to this. When I first got into this hobby, I think I developed an obsession with things like specs, resolution, megapixels, and, just the stuff. And I relied a lot on the stuff. And for whatever reason, it kind of made me think that, only epic things like sweeping landscapes in Iceland were deemed worthy of what I'd capture with the stuff. And with the stuff, there's always more stuff. So the fixed lens on this camera is truly my favorite part about the camera. Aside from some accessories and some converters that exist, which I really don't have an interest in, it just forces you to use it as it is. And that can be extremely refreshing for someone like me. I think for a lot of us newer photographers, we may have fell into that trap. And while there's nothing, wrong with that, and I'm still super passionate and interested in all the gear and the technology that moves this whole thing forward, the X100V really just helped me shape my mentality as a photographer. And you know what? I'm not really a photographer. I mainly do video stuff. I occasionally do take photos professionally, but at the end of the day, I've always just been a person who enjoys taking photos. And this camera was a humbling reminder of that. It helped me realize that I don't need to be taking 50 megapixel raw photos with a $5,000 body and a $2,000 lens. I don't need to spend hours and hours editing photos from a vacation with my wife. It helped me realize that the most meaningful photos to me are those everyday moments. And more times than not, it's just going to be a photo of my dog or, getting together with the boys or, just everyday life. So when it comes to the image, the X100V produces something that's just totally unique in my opinion. I spoke earlier on how using these high-end cameras, they made me only want to shoot things that I thought were epic. And, that might have just been a me thing, but this camera really just brought me back down to earth. And I think a large part of that is how it has a way of making the mundane look interesting. Whether it's just going on a walk or having some friends over, this camera is just magic and it makes you want to take it everywhere, not just on those epic road trips or whatever. And while the image is beautiful, I think it's more so just the way that it is. It's just always there, and it's not this big, bulky, intimidating thing in your face. So for people like me or my wife who hate being on camera, it doesn't make you feel like you're the subject of a photo shoot, which honestly, it translates a lot in my photos, especially the street photography stuff. Now, I know with the return of film, people are always chasing that nostalgic look, and that is the appeal of this camera for a lot of people, myself included. But at the end of the day, this is the only camera that when I pick it up, it's a totally new experience every time I use it. And it is because of those film recipes. I personally use the Fuji X weekly recipes, and having that kind of flexibility straight out of the camera is just something every photographer needs to experience. I do actually get a lot of questions from people about the recipes that I use, so in the future, I want to make a more detailed video on how exactly I set up my X100V, so stay tuned for that. So who is this camera for? Well, This camera is for the person who is sick of thinking about which bodies and which lenses to take on vacation. It's for the person who comes back from vacation and they lose all that creative momentum when you realize you have to edit hundreds of raw photos. This camera is for the person who is sick of looking at the same type of soulless images as you scroll your feed. And, you know, it's for the person who's really sick of the never-ending rabbit hole of gear and lenses. Really, this camera is just for the person that wants to get back to taking photos.